My supervisor terminated me for a $220 tool purchase, stating you're a thief. You don't deserve honest money. You ever just have one of those days where your entire life implodes, then out of the ashes, you rise like a phoenix holding a multi-million-dollar check in one hand and a giant middle finger in the other? Because that's exactly what happened to me. They called me a thief, they tried to ruin me, and honestly, it was the best damn thing that ever happened. For nearly a decade, I was the ghost in the machine at Nexcore Solutions. Not management, not some fancy executive, just the guy buried in the server room, ensuring the whole operation didn't melt down into a fiery mess of crashed databases and screaming clients. Think about it, every transaction, every customer login, every single piece of data flowing through that company? That was me. That was my work. I started there fresh out of college, back when Nexcore was small, maybe 180 people, and their systems were held together with pure hope and desperation. I practically rebuilt their entire back-end infrastructure in 18 months, setting up monitoring protocols that caught failures before customers even blinked. I did the unglamorous, invisible work that keeps companies alive. Life wasn't always about just code, though. About 3 years in, I met Tessa. She was a PR coordinator, and back then she actually seemed to like that I was stable, dependable. But things change, don't they? Her friends started dating investment bankers, and suddenly I wasn't ambitious enough. Tessa and my mom became this perfect, infuriating tag team, constantly hinting I should be doing more, earning more, being more. By year 7, Nexcore went public. The C-suite, the VPs, they all got millions. Me, I got a paperweight and a 5% raise. At the same time, Tessa started talking about an $80,000 wedding at some fancy hill country resort. I just wanted to not go into crippling debt for one single day. Then last April, Blake walked through the door. New VP of Technology Innovation. 32 years old, MBA from Wharton, convinced he was about to revolutionize everything. Here's the thing about Blake. He wasn't stupid in the traditional sense. He was dangerous in a way truly stupid people aren't. This guy could walk into a board meeting with a dumpster fire, and walk out with budget approval and a round of applause. He spoke fluent executive, knew exactly which metrics leadership cared about, and which ones they'd never bother to check. His first week, he held an all-hands meeting about modernization and eliminating legacy dependencies. The presentation was slick. The slides had all the right buzzwords, the charts showed impossible trajectories. Our projections made people nod their heads in agreement. Legacy dependencies was Blake speak for everything my team and I had built meticulously. But he made it sound like we were running the company on punch cards and a prayer. Blake didn't come alone. He had a sidekick, a kid in a blazer so tight it looked like it was painted on, sneakers too clean for actual work. He held his laptop like it was some sacred tablet. "This is BJ," Blake announced like he was unveiling a new product feature. "Brent, but everyone calls me BJ because it's like, more disruptive." Then he pulled out a tiny clicker and, for reasons only God and HR know, he added, "We're basically going from Windows 95 vibes to Iron Man vibes." Nobody laughed. Nobody. Except BJ, who nodded like he'd just nailed the closer at a stand-up comedy show. Blake kept rambling about legacy dependencies while BJ whispered, not quietly enough, to the guy next to him, "Legacy means old, right? Like dinosaur code." That dinosaur code? That was the code keeping payroll, billing, and customer service from turning into a bonfire. But sure, BJ, let's bully it. His second week, Blake called an emergency meeting at 6 p.m. on a Friday. 6 p.m. Friday. He claimed he'd found critical security vulnerabilities in our authentication system and wanted to deploy patches immediately. I asked him which vulnerabilities. He pulled up a report from some automated scanner. Half the findings were false positives. The other half were just configuration warnings, not actual threats. I explained this. He overruled me. The patches broke single sign-on for 3 of our biggest enterprise clients. I spent that entire weekend unfixing his fixes, while he was out at some swanky networking event downtown. Monday morning, he sent a company-wide email thanking the team for their rapid response. My name wasn't mentioned. His was 3 times in the signature block. Blake started one-on-ones in May. He was charming in small rooms, remembered everyone's name, except mine. He always called me Nathan Orchard, like it was one word, like I was a ticket number. He'd pull up my architecture diagrams, squinting at them like they were hieroglyphics. He even asked, "What happens if you leave?" I told him everything was documented. He just smirked, "We'll see about that." That summer, Blake pulled off one genuinely impressive move. He renegotiated our cloud hosting contract, cutting infrastructure spend by $840,000 annually. The CFO loved him. The problem? He achieved those savings by removing the redundancy buffers and failover capacity I'd spent years building in. He made the spreadsheet beautiful. He made the systems fragile. After that, it became a pattern. He'd remove safeguards for budget optics, things would inevitably fail under load, and I'd be there, restoring the boring, stable stuff that actually worked. Meanwhile, his consultants billed $180 an hour, 6 of them for 3 months. That's over $500,000 to recommend changes that broke things I'd built for free. I started keeping records. Commit logs, documentation, screenshots, irrefutable proof. Throughout the summer, smaller things kept happening. Meetings without me, project channels where my access was suddenly revoked, my name suspiciously missing from reviews. Tessa, meanwhile, was busy planning a wedding I wasn't sure I wanted. She'd show me venue options, 200 guests minimum, $80,000 for one day. She'd cry when I pushed back. And then my mom would call, reinforcing Tessa's every word. The storm finally hit late September. The morning they fired me started normally. I was troubleshooting a database performance issue. Procurement had finally unfrozen our budget after a 6-week spending freeze. During that time, our main database cluster started throwing serious warning signs. Memory leaks, connection drops, the kind of problems that snowball into catastrophes. I needed a diagnostic tool. A commercial license cost $220. It would let me trace the actual issue instead of guessing. I submitted the purchase request twice. Both times rejected. The errors were getting worse. I could literally feel the system degrading. So I made a call. I bought the tool on my personal credit card, installed it, found the bug in 90 minutes, and fixed it before any clients even noticed. Then I submitted the expense report with full documentation. That was my mistake, not the purchase. My mistake was assuming that preventing a disaster would actually matter. Blake showed up at my desk like he was about to present me with an Oscar for most policy violations. Security was right behind him, looming. And BJ stood there clutching a manila folder like it contained nuclear launch codes. He looked at my expense report, squinting like he was decoding ancient runes. So you bought software? BJ said, slowly, like he was narrating a true crime doc. With money? I didn't answer. I didn't want to accidentally encourage him. BJ nodded gravely and added, that's like technically fraud adjacent. Fraud adjacent. Over $220. The same company that was lighting cash on fire paying consultants to break things. I kept my voice even. I saved you from a database crash. The tool cost $220. Your consultants bill that in an hour. Blake's smile vanished. He leaned in close, his voice low enough that only I could hear. You're a thief. That's not worth clean money. I looked at him for a long moment. Didn't blink. Didn't argue. Just filed that sentence away in the part of my brain that keeps receipts. Noted, I said. He straightened up, confused by my lack of reaction. He probably expected groveling, excuses, maybe even anger he could document. Instead he got nothing. Just a guy calmly unplugging his laptop like this was any other Tuesday. Corporate policy, final paychecks, exit paperwork via email. I stopped listening. The servers hummed nearby, systems I'd built, running perfectly because I'd spent years making them bulletproof. None of that mattered now. But his words did. Not worth clean money. Over $220. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was taking notes. As I unplugged my laptop, BJ leaned forward and whispered, just so you know, if you want to appeal this, you should totally submit a ticket. That's how stuff gets handled. A ticket. For getting fired. I almost respected how committed he was to being utterly useless. We passed through the engineering floor. Heads turned. People I'd worked with for years watched me carry a potted plant toward the exit. Nobody said anything. The badge reader beeped when the guard deactivated my credentials. 9 years of access revoked in half a second. Outside, the heat hit me like a wall. I stood there holding my plant, feeling 9 years evaporate. Then I pulled out my phone. I called Tessa. I needed to hear a friendly voice, someone on my side. She answered on the third ring. Background noise. Laughter. Sounded like she was at lunch with friends. Hey babe, what's up? I'm at lunch with the girls, but I just got fired, I said. Pause. The background noise didn't stop. Just her voice cutting through it, suddenly careful. Wait, what? Why? Bought a diagnostic tool with my personal card. $220. Blake called it a policy violation. Another pause. Longer this time. Nathan, you got fired over $200? Yeah. Company was in a spending freeze. I saved them from a database crash. And, oh my God. Her voice shifted. Not sympathetic. Embarrassed. Sabrina, I'll call you back. Muffled sounds. She must have stepped away from the table. Nathan, are you serious right now? You couldn't just wait for approval? There wasn't time. The system was failing. So, you broke company policy and got yourself fired. That's what you're telling me. The tone. I knew that tone. The same one she used when I suggested a smaller wedding, when I said we should wait on the Hill Country venue. The tone that told me I wasn't enough. Tessa, I've been keeping their systems alive for 9 years, and now you're unemployed. Do you know how this looks? Do you know what I'm supposed to tell people? My fiancé got fired for stealing software. I didn't steal anything. I bought a tool to fix their problem. You bought something without permission and got fired for it? That's the story, Nathan. That's what everyone's going to hear. She exhaled, frustrated. God, I should have listened to my mom. She said you'd never move up. Said you were comfortable just maintaining things being average. The word hit different. Average. I'd been working 70-hour weeks, rebuilding their infrastructure, and she was saying I was average? Do you know what Sabrina's boyfriend just made? VP at 30. Equity and bonus. Meanwhile, I'm engaged to a guy who just got fired over a company credit card violation. It wasn't a violation. It doesn't matter what it was, Nathan. It matters what it looks like. And it looks like you're a failure who couldn't follow basic workplace rules. There it was. Failure. Not, are you okay? Not, what can I do? Just concerned about how my unemployment reflected on her. You know what, Tessa? I said, a strange calm settling over me. You're right. I am. Yeah, I'm a failure. So, you should probably upgrade. Nathan, don't be dramatic. I'm not. I'm being realistic. You want a VP at Goldman? I'm an unemployed systems engineer. The math doesn't work. I didn't mean it like that. Yeah, you did. I hung up. Stood there in the parking lot, holding a succulent and a box of desk supplies. Fresh out of a job and a relationship in the same hour. I wasn't going to beg. Wasn't going to explain. And I certainly wasn't going to fund a wedding for someone who just called me a failure. I pulled up my banking app. Started making changes. The person who answered on the second ring was a lawyer I'd worked with years ago on a contract dispute. We'd stayed friendly. 40 minutes later, we were in a coffee shop downtown. He listened while I explained everything. The firing. The $220. The 9 years erased. Tessa calling me a failure. Texas is at-will employment, he said, taking a sip of coffee. Unless you can prove discrimination, wrongful termination won't stick. I knew that, I said, already opening my laptop. That's not why I called. I opened a folder. Inside were files I'd kept organized for years. Commit histories, license agreements, system documentation, all time-stamped and signed. Core Flow, I said, pointing to my orchestration framework. He leaned forward. The one you built freelancing? They've been using it for 5 years, integrated into every major system. I never transferred ownership, I confirmed. My license requires payment for commercial use. He started scrolling through files. Git tag from 2019, before Nexcore started using it commercially. Version 1.0.0, initial public release. License header screenshot from their production code. An internal Slack message dated March 2020, Core Flow is handling production load beautifully. A dependency graph showing 143 services with direct Core Flow integration. And then the kicker, telemetry clause from my license, allowing me to collect anonymized usage metrics for compliance verification. His expression changed from skeptical to deeply impressed. About 8 billion API calls per month, I added. All logged, all traceable. He shook his head. Their exposure is catastrophic. Damages, injunction risk, and a rebuild timeline that could sink them. Conservatively, 4.2 million in licensing violations. Something settled in my chest. Not excitement, just a cold, hard certainty. They thought firing me was the end. It was just the beginning. My lawyer smiled. Once we start this, there's no going back. Good, I said. I don't want to go back. We spent the rest of the afternoon building the case, every piece of evidence organized, every violation documented. By the time we finished, the sun was setting. Give me a week, he said. Demand letter drafted. But this is going to get ugly. They made it ugly, I replied, when they walked me out like I stole something. I went home that evening to an empty apartment. Tessa was at her mom's for the week. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I slept 9 hours straight. No alerts, no dashboards, no responsibility. When I woke up, I separated my finances like I was prepping for a deposition. New account at a different bank. Change direct deposit. Removed Tessa as an authorized user on all credit cards. Canceled automatic payments for wedding expenses. Credit freezes on all 3 bureaus. Changed passwords on every shared account. The apartment lease had my name only, my signature only. Then I emailed every wedding vendor where I'd signed anything. Subject line, withdrawal of authorization for charges. Kept copies of everything. I didn't ruin her life. I just stopped funding it. The difference matters in court. The first consequence hit Tessa on Wednesday. The ring was next. Not a conversation, not a meetup, not let's talk. I sent one email, return the ring by Friday. Track shipping. Signature required. An engagement ring is a conditional gift. Weddings off. Conditions off. She tried to turn it into a debate. I kept it administrative. 2 days later, it showed up in a small box like it was trying to pretend none of this had happened. My phone rang at 2:47 p.m. Tessa. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear this. Nathan, what the heck is going on? Her voice had that edge it got when things weren't going according to her plan. The venue just called me. Your card declined. They said your number's disconnected and your email bounced. They need payment by 5 p.m. or we lose the deposit and the date. Okay, I said. Okay. That's all you have to say? Nathan, that's $12,000. The wedding's in 4 months. I need you to call them and fix this. Not my problem anymore. Silence. Then her voice dropped. What are you talking about? You called me a failure yesterday. Said I'd never move up. Said your mom was right about me being average. So I'm giving you what you want. Space to find someone better. Nathan, I was upset. I didn't mean. Yeah, you did. And now you can figure out the venue on your own. Maybe ask one of Sabrina's VP boyfriends for help. Are you seriously doing this right now? Over one conversation? Over 9 years of conversations. This was just the last one. Her tone shifted again. Panic. Nathan, I don't have $12,000. My credit card won't cover it. If we don't pay by 5, we lose everything. Please, we can talk about this after. Nothing to talk about. Weddings off. Relationships off. Good luck with the venue. I hung up. Blocked the number. She tried calling from her mom's phone, her office line, 2 of her friends' numbers. I watched them all go to voicemail. Saved every single one. By 5:07 p.m., the venue had released the date and kept the deposit. Someone else booked it within 48 hours. Her Instagram story that night was a quote about toxic people and financial mistreatment. 3 friends commented support. Everyone else stayed quiet. They'd all met me. They knew. Then I checked my personal monitoring system, the one built into CoreFlow's license agreement. Real-time telemetry on how my framework was being used. The graphs glowed, API calls flowing, data processing, everything running on code I had written. For years that pulse belonged to Nexcore. Now I realized it had always belonged to me. They thought they owned everything I built. They were about to learn the difference. The demand letter went out Monday 9 a.m. My lawyer sent it certified mail and email to Nexcore Legal, Blake, the CEO, the CFO, and 3 board members. Subject: formal notice of commercial IP infringement and licensing violation. Litigation hold. We'd spent the previous Friday assembling the final case file in his downtown office. White boards, 3 monitors, enough coffee to fuel a small army. The evidence was pristine. Copyright registration from 2019, predating Nexcore's commercial use. Git repository with commit history dating back to 2018. Public release announcement on Hacker News, archived. The dependency graph showing 143 services with direct CoreFlow integration, another 180 with indirect dependencies. Industry standard licensing rates, $180,000 to $400,000 annually for enterprises their size. CoreFlow's usage would have cost them $840,000 per year if they'd licensed it properly. 5 years of usage, 8 billion API calls monthly. Conservative estimate? $4.2 million in licensing fees they should have paid. The demand letter was surgical. Development history with GitHub timestamps predating their commercial adoption. My documented ownership through copyright registration. Their usage: 8 billion monthly API calls across 143 production services. Industry standard licensing calculation. The number: $4,217,840. Payment terms: 30 days from receipt. Wire transfer to escrow account. Failure to comply would result in a federal copyright infringement lawsuit and injunctive relief to cease all CoreFlow usage immediately. By 10:30 a.m., my lawyer had received 4 calls from their counsel, all claiming work for hire doctrine. He sent them the Git repository timestamps proving I built CoreFlow before Nexcore ever used it, the original public release announcement, and my copyright registration certificate. They went quiet. By noon, the letter had leaked internally. Engineers were doing the math. $4.2 million was 12% of their annual infrastructure budget. The week after the demand letter, Nexcore's infrastructure started failing in predictable ways. Blake's consultants were still there, still modernizing. I watched through my telemetry as they refactored code, removed redundancies, simplified architectures. Each change looked smart on its own. Together, they were dismantling the safeguards that kept everything stable. The first major incident hit on a Friday at 11:47 p.m. SEV0 declared. Database cluster experiencing cascade failure. Customer-facing dashboards returning errors. Transaction processing grinding to a halt. A junior engineer posted in the incident channel at 12:31 a.m. Does anyone know why this validation loop existed? We removed it during optimization sprint. She pasted a link to one of my old architecture documents, explaining exactly why that loop prevented race conditions. Blake's response? We need an executive summary of the situation for the leadership update. The database was actively corrupting customer records, and this man wanted PowerPoint bullets. The outage lasted 3 hours. They finally rolled back the changes at 2:47 a.m., not because Blake approved it, but because their VP of Customer Success called the CEO directly after their biggest client threatened contract termination. SLA penalties from that night, $180,000 across 4 enterprise clients. Stock dipped 2% when markets opened Monday. Monday morning, all hands. Blake presented it as a learning opportunity. Didn't mention whose code they'd removed. Didn't mention whose documentation they'd ignored. Meanwhile, Nexcore's response to the demand letter came in waves. Phase 1, denial. Wednesday afternoon, their general counsel sent 8 pages explaining why my claim had no merit. Work for hire doctrine. Employment agreement clauses. Company policy. Confident tone throughout. My lawyer responded in 2 pages. Copyright registration predating commercial use. Public release history. Get timestamps. Federal law superseding corporate policy. They went quiet for 3 days. Phase 2, indirect pressure. Friday evening, Tessa called. Left a voicemail. Someone from Nexcore HR had reached out to her through LinkedIn. Just checking in on how I was doing. Real concerned citizen energy. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer. He added it to the evidence file under intimidation tactics. A former colleague texted, saying he'd heard through the grapevine that I was making trouble, and it might affect my reputation. I asked who told him that. He went silent. Tuesday afternoon, someone from Nexcore HR called me directly, said they'd been reviewing my termination and thought there might have been procedural oversights. Would I be interested in discussing a consulting arrangement? I asked if my lawyer could join the call. She said, maybe we should keep it informal first. I said, all communication goes through my attorney. She never called back. Phase 3, Blake's personal campaign. Blake tried to. Monday afternoon, an email from his work address. Subject, quick clarification needed. Asked if we could discuss the alleged licensing issue before it became formal. Said he was sure it was a misunderstanding. I didn't respond. My lawyer did. All matters should be directed to Nexcore's general counsel. Tuesday, Blake tried his personal email. Subject, can we talk? Said this was bigger than personal issues. Could we find middle ground? My lawyer replied, Mr. Orchard will not be engaging in direct communication. Please cease contact. Wednesday, a LinkedIn message. Talked about seeing my consultant profile. Said my work was impressive. Mentioned potential collaboration opportunities, like the licensing dispute didn't exist. I left it unread, visible but ignored. Thursday afternoon, Blake called my lawyer directly. Tried the attorney-to-attorney approach. My lawyer explained that reasonable solutions involve paying licensing fees. Blake asked what I'd accept to make this go away quietly. My lawyer said, the number in the demand letter. Blake's tone shifted. Started talking about how this would hurt the company, hurt employees, hurt customers. My lawyer pointed out that Blake had created the situation by firing me. Blake hung up. The following week, a mutual connection reached out, said Blake had contacted him asking for an introduction to clear the air. I told him Blake fired me over $220 and was now facing a licensing lawsuit. Nothing to clear up. Blake went silent after that until the text message came later. After everything was decided. Then came the public leak. Wednesday afternoon, someone in Nexcore's engineering team posted a screenshot in a private Slack group. The architecture diagram. Core flow at the center of everything. Comment, just realized our entire infrastructure is built on an unlicensed framework and we just got served a $4 million demand letter. The funniest part was how it leaked. Not through some hardened whistleblower. Through BJ. He posted in the wrong Slack channel. Not engineering leadership. Not legal. Just a massive cross-functional group with like 900 people and 3 interns running the company's social media. He dropped a screenshot of the demand letter header and typed, FYI. We might need to pivot away from CoreFlow. It's like a licensing thing, but don't worry, legal is aligned. Legal is aligned, is what people say right before disaster eats the building. Within minutes, someone replied, BJ, delete this. Someone else, BJ, what is CoreFlow? Someone else, BJ, why is there a $4.2 million number in this screenshot? BJ responded, oops, wrong channel. LOL. That LOL cost the company 6% of its stock value by the end of the week. That screenshot made it to a back-end engineering Discord server by Thursday morning. 20,000 members. Comments range from holy crap to detailed technical breakdowns. Friday, a small industry newsletter called DevOps Weekly mentioned it. One paragraph, no names, just an unnamed tech company facing licensing dispute over critical infrastructure framework. The following Monday, a mid-tier tech blog picked it up. Nexcore Solutions infrastructure crisis. Unlicensed software at core of platform. Stock dropped 6% that day. Wednesday, the bigger outlets noticed, not because the story went viral, but because investors started asking questions on the quarterly earnings call. Can management comment on reports of material IP licensing disputes? The CFO gave a non-answer about reviewing all third-party dependencies. The market heard, yes, it's true. Stock dropped another 4% Thursday. That's when the board went into emergency session. Meanwhile, something else was happening that I didn't expect. Nexcore's engineering team was trying to rewrite CoreFlow. Not publicly announced, just a quiet emergency project Blake had greenlit the day after the demand letter arrived. My lawyer's contact on the inside sent updates. They'd hired 6 contractors, senior engineers, each billing $200 an hour. Blake told the board they could have a replacement ready in 90 days. For the first time since this started, I felt actual concern. 90 days wasn't impossible. CoreFlow was complex but not magic. A good team with proper motivation could reverse engineer the core functionality and build something adequate. Not perfect, but functional enough to argue my framework wasn't critical. If they pulled it off before settlement negotiations, my leverage evaporated. Week 2. Their replacement was handling 30% of production load. Performance metrics looked acceptable. Not great, but acceptable. I stopped sleeping properly. 3-4 hours a night. Kept checking telemetry, watching my leverage slowly erode as their rewrite progressed. Then week 3 happened. Their replacement crashed under full production load. Not a graceful failure. A complete cascade collapse. Took down their entire data platform for 4 hours. Their biggest client, a Fortune 500 financial services company, couldn't process transactions. SLA penalties? $340,000. The issue? Their rewrite worked fine for normal operations, but couldn't handle the edge cases I'd spent 5 years discovering and fixing in CoreFlow. The boring, invisible stuff that only matters when everything goes wrong. Their lead contractor quit the next day. 3 others followed. The rewrite project died. My lawyer got the update from his inside contact and called me immediately. They're done, he said. The replacement failed and they're out of time. Settlement negotiations are starting tomorrow. I slept 8 hours that night. First time in weeks. Friday morning, Nexcore's board held an emergency session. My lawyer had a contact inside who fed him details. The numbers were bad. $4.2 million demand, but real exposure closer to $40 million in lost revenue if they had to rebuild from scratch, 18 months minimum. And if this went to trial, statutory damages could hit $21 million plus legal fees. Someone finally asked the question that mattered. Whose decision was it to fire the person who owns this framework? All eyes turned to Blake. He tried deflecting. Said the termination was standard policy. Said he'd inherited infrastructure problems. The board chair cut through it. Did you know about CoreFlow's licensing status before you terminated Mr. Orchard? Blake hesitated. Fatal mistake. I was aware the framework existed, he stammered, but not the licensing implications. Translation, I knew we were using his code. I fired him anyway. The CFO piled on. Blake's team had been removing safeguards, causing outages, SLA penalties over $2 million, stock decline, customer complaints. Someone said it plainly, we fired the only person who understood our infrastructure, and now owe him $4.2 million. Do I have that right? The general counsel confirmed. Blake was placed on administrative leave that morning. Discovery preparation later surfaced the key email. Blake to the CEO, 3 weeks before my firing. They needed to reduce headcount. I'd been there forever. Salary too high. Not adapting to new direction. CEO responded that I was reliable though. Systems never break. Blake's reply, anyone can maintain working systems. We need innovators, not caretakers. Anyone can maintain working systems. That sentence alone was worth $4.2 million. By this point, 4 senior engineers had quit. Tech blogs were running Exodus stories. Their outside counsel didn't call to negotiate anymore. He called because the board had given him a number they could afford to lose, and it was lower than what a federal trial would cost them. Blake's final message. Then came the direct contact. Thursday afternoon, Blake called me from his personal number. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear it. Nathan, can we talk? Man to man. You fired me over $220, I said. Nothing to talk about. I know. But this is bigger than that now. You're going to destroy the company. People are going to lose their jobs. Our customers? You should have thought about that before you walked me out like a thief. I made a mistake. I'm admitting it. What do you want? An apology? I'll apologize publicly if you want. We can work this out. We can find a number that works for everyone. The number's in the demand letter. Nathan, come on. Be reasonable. $4 million for software you built years ago. You're better than this. That's when I heard it. Not remorse. Fear. He wasn't apologizing for what he did. He was scared of what I was doing. I kept your systems running for 9 years. You called me a thief. Said my work wasn't worth clean money. Now you're begging. I never said you did. You just didn't say it out loud. Anyone can maintain working systems, right? That's what you told the CEO. Silence on the line. Have your lawyers call my lawyer. I hung up. Blocked the number. Blake's employment was terminated October 31st. Press release cited strategic realignment of technology leadership. No severance beyond contractually obligated minimum. Board vote was unanimous. My lawyer texted me the update November 1st. He's gone. They timed it for the earnings call. Very corporate. I was hiking when I got the message. Stopped on the trail, read it twice, then kept walking. Good. Mom tried her play the following week. She'd been calling since the Nexcore story hit tech news. I hadn't answered. She escalated to a family group text. Cousins, aunts, uncles, 23 people. Nathan's being unreasonable about Tessa and the wedding. After everything we've done for him, this is how he treats family. Someone needs to talk sense into him. My cousin shut it down fast. So you wanted him to go into debt for a party? He got fired and you're mad he stopped paying for an $80,000 wedding? My uncle, $80,000 for one day? My aunt, he lost his job, hired a lawyer, and you're upset he can't fund a wedding? Are we hearing this right? Mom tried the family values angle. Nobody bit. She left the group chat the next day. 2 weeks later she called. Your cousin made me realize something. We pushed you too hard. Made you feel like you weren't enough. I'm sorry. Yeah, you did, I said. I thought we were helping. You weren't. You spent 9 years comparing me to people you didn't even know. Making me feel like I wasn't enough. So we're done. Nathan, don't be dramatic. Not dramatic. Just done. Lose my number. I hung up. Blocked her. Haven't spoken since. Don't plan to. Turns out, when you stop caring what someone thinks, they stop mattering entirely. The real negotiation started after the board meeting, not about the amount. They'd accepted that reality. But how to pay it without admitting what it was. They tried structuring it as consulting fees. Tried adding NDAs and gag orders. Tried making me available for tech support. My lawyer shut down every creative attempt. Federal court proceedings are public record, he explained. You can either settle this privately on our terms, or we file Monday and every detail becomes searchable public information forever. Finally, November 3rd, they agreed to my lawyer's terms. Clean wire transfer. Narrow technical confidentiality provision only. No gag order. No creative structuring. Just payment for what they owed. Papers signed November 4th. Wire initiated November 5th. And then I waited. Friday, November 5th, 3 p.m. My lawyer sent confirmation that the wire had been initiated. Amount, $4,217,840, plus $43,200 in interest and fees. Total, $4,261,040. But initiated doesn't mean cleared. Bank compliance departments treat million-dollar wires like potential money laundering. Verification process, source confirmation, fraud screening. During that week of waiting, the rent came due. First month without income. I'd been unemployed for 6 weeks. Savings account had $8,200. Rent was $2,400. Legal fees were piling up. My lawyer was working partially on contingency, but there were still court filing fees, expert witness deposits, research costs, another $3,000 due that week. I paid rent. Paid legal costs. That left $2,800 in my account. If the wire didn't clear, I'd have to ask my lawyer for an extension on fees. Maybe find contract work fast. Maybe borrow money. The confidence I'd been showing? I was 6 weeks away from broke if this fell through. Tuesday, 11:47 a.m. My phone buzzed. Bank notification. Deposit cleared. $4,261,040. I stared at the number. Every invisible hour. Every late night fix. Every system nobody acknowledged. All of it right there. I didn't jump around. Didn't call anyone except my lawyer. Just sat at my desk and verified everything 3 times. Called the bank's fraud department. Confirmed the wire was legitimate, not a reversal risk. Fully cleared. They put a note on the account flagging it as a verified legitimate business transaction. Sent confirmation to my lawyer. He sent back the escrow release authorization and final licensing agreement. Both parties signed. Matter closed. Then I sat there for 20 minutes just breathing. The $220 expense report was still in my files. I pulled it up, printed it on photo paper, put it in a frame. Next to it, I printed the wire transfer confirmation. Both documents side by side on my desk. Some people keep trophies. I keep reminders of what I survived. I called my financial advisor. Set aside taxes, about $1.3 million. Paid off everything with my name on it. That left about $2 million for building something new. Tessa tried calling from different numbers, voicemails about making mistakes, being sorry, wanting another chance. Deleted without listening. Changed my number 2 weeks later. Mom tried reaching out through a cousin. Said she was proud of me, wanted to reconnect. I told my cousin to tell her I appreciated the sentiment, but needed space indefinitely. I filed paperwork for Nexcore Solutions LLC within 2 weeks. Hired 2 engineers I'd known for years. Both overlooked at previous companies. Both got paid better than I ever was at Nexcore. Nexcore ironically remained a client. They hired a new CTO in January. Actually competent. She'd email with questions. Always respectful. Always processed invoices on time. Signed a long-term licensing agreement. $600,000 annually for unlimited CoreFlow usage. Plus consulting at $400 per hour when they needed expertise beyond basic support. The company that fired me over $220 now pays me 6 figures a year to keep their systems running. Same systems. Same code. Different respect. Blake resurfaced 8 months later. LinkedIn message about potential collaboration. I didn't respond. A month after that, I heard he'd applied to 3 companies where I had contacts. Each one asked for references. I confirmed his employment dates and declined to elaborate. They drew their own conclusions. One afternoon, a young engineer called, voice shaking. Kid named Kyle. Said they just fired him for buying a monitoring tool, $180. Found my story online. He asked if I was scared when I started this whole thing. No, I told him. I was tired of being scared. There's a difference. Kyle works for me now. Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because of the money or even the revenge, but because it forced me to finally value my work properly. So, tell me, if you were in my shoes, faced with that kind of betrayal and dismissal, what would you have done? Have you ever had to fight for your own worth like that? I'd really love to hear your thoughts down in the comments.